Top 10 NFL coaches of all time. Number 10, Mike Shanahan. So he's on the coaches list of all time. Fantastic coach. Yes, has had some trouble with in terms of players, so it's not always a great sign. But that doesn't diminish on what exactly he did. Pretty much his whole full coaching history. He was an offensive assistant for Oklahoma University, and he went to the backfield coach in Northern Arizona, went to offensive coordinator for a while through different universities, finally landed a job in the NFL as a receivers coach for the Broncos, was an offensive coordinator, became a head coach for the Raiders for 2 years, came back to the Broncos, was a quarterbacks coach, offensive coordinator, went to the 49ers for 3 years to be offensive coordinator, head coach for a long time from 1995 to 2008 of the Denver Broncos. Went to Washington 2010 2013, got fired, and it was not a great time for him as a coach of the Redskins. But let's take a look at his records and see how I can prove that he is, one of the best. So first of all, 88 7-9 record, not terrible. 89 1-3. Yeah, so he got released on that. Didn't even get an opportunity at all until 95. And in 95 they went 8-8, didn't make the playoffs. But 96 was a great year for them. 13-3. They got to the playoffs. They were definitely a favorite to win it all. They didn't. They lost in the playoffs. I believe it was the divisional round. But you're seeing how second chances are coming. And then 97 and 98, they went back-to-back Super Bowl champs. Again, a coach to go back-to-back, that's some talent in there. You got to give him some credit for that. After being 12-4 and 14-2, went down 99 to a 6-10 record, didn't make the playoffs. 2000 went back to 11-5, lost in the playoffs, but at least they made the playoffs. Didn't make the playoffs in 2001, 2002, but they were 8-8 and 9-7. You're looking at 2003 and 2004 being 10-6 both times, losing in the playoffs there. 2005, 13-3, lost in the AFC Championship game. Might as well. They could have definitely gone to the Super Bowl, of course. Then you look at, pretty much you're looking at 9-7 after that, then 7-9, then 8-8. And then 2010, 11, 12, 13, as the Redskins, you're looking at first year 6-10, 5-11. But then he went 10-6, and RG3's unfortunate injury, but also Seattle's just really good defense pulled it off there, so they couldn't win there. And then his last year, 3-13, wasn't pretty. Benched some guys, But you're looking at a guy that, for the most part, was pretty successful. And, overall, he won more games than he lost. He was able to have an 8-6 playoff record. He was able to have back-to-back rings. His average rank in there was like 2.6 was their average rank that he coached on a team. That's pretty dynamic. And overall, you got to give him credit. You really do. And on top of that, just a guy that honestly has employed guys like Gary Kubiak, has employed Kyle Shanahan, of course, Raheem Morris, so Jim Haslett. So overall, pretty great coach. Definitely one of the best of all time. And then number 10. Number 9, Joe Gibbs. Joe Gibbs, the guy that really needs a lot of credit, honestly. He really does need some credit for what he did. Fantastic coach, just overall Hall of Fame coach. Fantastic guy. And of course he's a Hall of Fame coach because he is in the Hall of Fame. But just what this guy has been able to do for this Redskins organization is forever will be looked at as a legend over there in D.C. As coaches come and go in Washington, the only one that was super consistent for the longest time, and a big reason this Redskins organization is, pretty relevant still, is because of Joe Gibbs. He really made sure that he brought really good football players to D.C. He brought titles. It was great. So let's just take a look at exactly what we have, his history. He actually didn't start coaching until he was 38, and he was an offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 78, 79, 80, was an offensive coordinator for the San Diego Chargers. In 1981, he got a head coaching job and was the head coach from 81 all the way to 2007, and that's about it. He did everything he could, and honestly, it was pretty great to see what kind of coach he was. It was great, and you're looking at exactly what he did. I mean, he worked for Donnie Coryell and John McKay, which was great, offensive coordinator for both of them, and he employed guys like Emmett Thomas and Greg Williams. So, some really well-known guys. During his career, he had about, I believe, 22 total challenges. 22 or 28. Sorry, 28. And 22 were overturned, actually, and 6 were upheld. So, pretty, yeah, pretty good. He was a pretty good challenger. He was pretty good at what he did. He could see what's going on. He was just a really good observant coach, and that's what made him one of the best at coaching, pretty much. You know, he was observant. He was ready with film. He was a hard worker, and that's why he has 3 Super Bowl rings. So let's take a look at his entire record here. I mean, you're looking at starting in 81, they went 8-8. Then 82, they got to 8-1, and they won the Super Bowl that year. So Super Bowl champs. 1983, 14-2, went to the Super Bowl, lost there. Then 11-5, 10-6, 12-4, 11-4, won the Super Bowl there. 7-9, 10-6, 10-6, 14-2, Super Bowl. 9-7, 6-10, 10-6, 5-11, and 9-7 on his final year. And you're looking at just, he's always had winning records for the most part. It's always been 500 or above. Maybe a few seasons where it hasn't, but you're looking at the consistency of what he did. That's pretty impressive. And you're looking at exactly what happened. I mean, how about this though? How about this? His record is 154-94 in the regular season. His playoff record is 17-7. And like I said, challenge-wise, he won 6 out of 22. So, you know, not terrible, not that great, but he had a number of challenges. But yeah, 17-7, a 70% winning percentage in the playoffs. That's a great coach when he can get it done in the playoffs. And like I said, win 3 Super Bowls. Yeah, that's pretty good. So give him that spot on this list. Number 8, Don Shula. Don Shula is forever will be known as one of the best coaches in the NFL. A legend out in Miami. And also you can also give him that title as being a super great coach for the Baltimore Colts, where he led them was a Super Bowl, which is great. Anyway, so we take a look at exactly what happened. Let's take a look at exactly what happened. So he started coaching, actually, defensive backs at the age of 28 in college, University of Virginia. Went back to defensive backs again at the 59, University of Kentucky. And then in the 60s, he went to the NFL, and he stayed there. From 1960 to 62, he was a defensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. And then from 63 to 69, Baltimore Colts head coach. And from 70 all the way to 95, head coach of the Miami Dolphins. He worked for George Wilson. But most importantly, he was the one that employed Chuck Noll, which would go on to win 4 Super Bowls with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So that should get your eyebrows a little bit raised, and he did hire Chuck Noll. Great thing. Don Shula is a Hall of Famer. He's won 2 Super Bowls. So let's just get into it. First year as a head coach, he went 8-6. Then he went 12-2, lost in the playoffs. 10-3-1, lost in the playoffs. 9-5, 11-1-2, 13-1, and they won the NFL championship, which is pretty much, they were NFC champions at the time. That's what it's called, but NFL champions. And went to the Super Bowl, and we all know they lost to the New York Jets. Then they were 8-5-1, 10-4, and At that time, they lost in the playoffs. 10-3-1, and they were AFC champions. Lost in the Super Bowl. 14-0, and they won the Super Bowl. And again, the only team to go undefeated all regular season. So that should also give you kind of a question of Don Shula was also part of that team, the undefeated team that no one has been able to break. 12-2, and they won the Super Bowl again. They went back to back on there, and then they went 11-3, lost in the playoffs. 10-4, 6-8, 10-4, 11-5, lost in the playoffs. 10-6, lost in the playoffs. 8-8, 11-4-1, and lost in the playoffs. 7-2, and were AFC champions, lost in the Super Bowl. 12-4, lost in the playoffs. 14-2, went to the Super Bowl, and they lost. And then 12-4, they lost in the AFC Championship game. 8-8, 8-7, 6-10, 8-8, 12-4, lost in the AFC Championship game. 11-5, lost in the AFC Championship game. 9-7, 10-6, and 9-7. 10-6, 9-7. They both lost in the playoffs. You're looking at he was able to reach the biggest game of it all 6 times, and he went 2 for 6. And you know what? He'll take 2. I feel like he definitely would have taken 6, but I mean 2 is pretty good. I have to agree that I think the fact that 2 of those had to be against, really, I mean, it's kind of unfair to put that kind of pressure because, I mean, the 80s were the 49ers years. Like, honestly, it was definitely not a Miami time. It was San Francisco, pretty much, and they were going to win. They were going to dominate. So, you know, I feel bad for them on that. 71, I believe they lost to the Redskins, but not the Redskins. I believe they lost. Dang, I don't remember who they lost to in 71. I can't remember right now. But, you know, those back-to-back Super Bowls, that undefeated season, that's got to give credit to Don Shula. So, you know, he's deserving of being on this list. Number 7, George Halas. So George Halas, Chicago Bears head coach. Fantastic guy. Legend, of course, legendary coach. Winning 5 NFL championships at the time. That could be considered Super Bowls, but just winning 5 of them is pretty remarkable. The fact that he was a player, he did end up coaching, he did end up becoming an executive in terms of ownership. So he was a big part of this game, and I think we should not kind of diminish ourselves from knowing that. I think he was a fantastic coach, and his coaching started in 1920, and he ended it in 1967. So, I mean, overall, fantastic lifespan he had, honestly. And 9 years prior to that, I mean, he was an NFL player. So, I mean, you gotta give him some credit there. Anyway, let's start, shall we? And we're gonna start all the way with what happened while he was a coach for 1920 for the Decatur Staleys, which I believe is now the Chicago Bears. In 1921, Chicago Staleys. So yeah, pretty much Chicago Bears, and then, you know, pretty much was a part of this organization for his entire life. He is a Chicago Bear legend for life. I think everyone will remember him as a Chicago Bear, of course. So Chicago Bear, if you hear Chicago Bears, I'm pretty sure a lot of people would say George Halas because of what he brought to the table to Chicago. Unfortunately, you know, 1 Super Bowl for them in the modern era. If only they had the Super Bowl a lot earlier, you could have seen the Bears have 6, and that would have been almost all time the best, and that would have been pretty great to see. So, let's get into it, shall we? We start all the way from his first year. They went 10-1. The next year they went 9-1-1, and they became NFL champs. 9-3, 9-2-1, 6-1-4, 9-5-3, 12-1-3, 9-3-2, 7-5-1, 4-9-2, 10-2-1. In 1933 they became NFL champs. 13-0, and they lost in the playoffs. 6-4-2, 9-3-0, 9-1-1, and lost in the playoffs. 6-5, 8-3. 8-3 became NFL champs. 10-1 became NFL champs back to back. 5-0. 8-2-1 became NFL champs for 3 years in three championships in 4 years. 8-4, 10-2, 9-3, 9-3 and lost in the playoffs. 7-5, 5-7, 3-8, 8-4, 8-4, 8-4, 8-4, 5-6-1, 8-6, 9-5, 11-1 NFL champs in 1963. 5-9, 9-5, 5-7, and 7-6. He overall had 318 victories, 148 losses, and 31 ties, and had an overall record of 6-3 playoff record with combination of 5 NFL championships. Overall, legendary coach, should be known to the rest of the world and everyone that knows football who this man is. Number 6, Tom Landry. Legendary coach Tom Landry, coaching for 33 plus years. The man that played in 9 or 10 NFL seasons, the man that got an All-Pro as a player and a Pro Bowler. Yeah, I think he needs some credit for being a player as well. Great DB and a great halfback, but he found a great calling when it came to coaching. And we start with exactly his entire track record. And it starts in 1954 to 59, defensive coordinator for the New York Giants. In 1960, he got the job as the Dallas Cowboys head coach and would continue to have his job until 1988. At that time, pretty much he got fired by Jerry Jones, and, they started to go a different route. Looking at it, employed Dan Reeves, so pretty important guy there to really be able to recruit in there. So let's just take a look, because he has had a lot of success as a coach, one of the best of all time for sure. So let's take a look. And we start his first year 0-11-1. They went 4-9-1, 5-8-1, 4-10-1, or 4-10, 5-8-1, 7-7, 10-3-1, made the playoffs, lost. 9-5, made the playoffs, lost. 12-2, made the playoffs, lost. 11-2-1, made the playoffs and lost. 10-4, won the NFC, went to the Super Bowl, unfortunately lost. 11-3, went to the Super Bowl, won the Super Bowl, Super Bowl champs. 10-4, they went to the playoffs, they lost. 10-4, went to the playoffs and lost. 8-6, 10-4, went to the playoffs, won the NFC, didn't win the Super Bowl. 11-3, lost in the playoffs. 12-2, went to the Super Bowl, won the Super Bowl, and there's his second ring. 12-4, went to the Super Bowl as NFC champs and lost. 11-5, went to the playoffs and lost. 12-4, went to the playoffs and lost in the championship game. 12-4, went to the playoffs and lost. 1982, 6-3, and they lost in the NFC Championship game. 12-4, went to the playoffs and lost. 9-7, 10-6, went to the playoffs and lost. 7-9, 7-8, and 3-13. Overall, a lot of history with him. They went to the playoffs a lot as the Dallas Cowboys. They went to the Super Bowl a lot as the Dallas Cowboys. And for him, he led them to 5 Super Bowls, I believe. 5 Super Bowls, winning 2 out of 5. That's not terrible. That's just, like I said, a legendary coach will lead their team to the Super Bowl numerous times. Like George Halas led him to a lot of championship games, You're looking at, further down, Joe Gibbs. He was able to lead him to the Super Bowl. Mike Shanahan, a little bit, was able to lead him to the Super Bowl, of course. But this guy was able to lead him to the Super Bowl 5 times. That's pretty ridiculous. And Don Shula, he was able to lead him to the Super Bowl a lot. Those 2 guys, fantastic legends. He's a legend. We'll always remember Tom Landry with the hat. That shadow there is awesome. Just an awesome picture. So that's going to be always in the bottom of everyone's memory. And, he's a legendary coach. Yes, he sounds kind of low because he's at number 6. I just feel like the top 5 that I got right now are just, their name itself should be alone to just be like, yeah, that I would agree with that. So